Oh, damn, we're live. What's happening, everybody? All right, so I figured for this chat, first of all, happy whatever day it is to you. Now that we're about to slide on into our next stage of quarantine, if that even becomes a thing. Anyway, 2020, am I right? So anyway, what I wanted to do is talk to you guys a little bit about what's been going on with the truck. A little bit about what's been going on with the car, but to be completely honest, it's really been fun playing with the car. Michael Corleone's in with the arm flex. I like it. What's up, man? By the way, we are not going to be doing another 3-hour marathon run on this. So fair warning, if I get to you or if I don't get to you, it's not because I love you or hate you. It's just because, listen, 3-hour long shows are tough, especially when you have to wake up about 4 hours after doing it. Nestor's coming in. Got the arm flex. I like it. What's up, man? And so here's the thing. The C25 coming along just fine. Everything was going just according to plan. Y'all are going to love this. So here's what I did. And again, this is stuff that's kind of tough to do when you're doing everything solo. I'll have a couple of pictures posted up on the Instagram as far as what I was doing. But anyway, the truck has got, now it's got new motor mount supports, and a new set of headers. Now the headers are there kind of as a stopgap measure. I'm not going to be using these particular headers for very long. They're really more to check clearances and things like that with this truck. One of the weird things about these old trucks is the frame rails are kind of narrow, and one of the problems is dealing with the headers and doing all the other fun stuff that you're doing with that, just making sure everything fits. So long story short, I'm going to get an exhaust system put together that's going to work with these headers, going to run it, get it tuned, probably get an intake, carburetor, stuff like that. Get all of that done first, and then probably switch it back to maybe a set of coated headers or something like that. But anyway, I get done with that, and the truck's basically getting ready to be sent off to Dr. Diff to get the leaf springs done, the trans redone, basically bring the truck up to snuff as far as being streetable. And from there would come the carburetor, the intake, and that's a lot easier to film because when you're up underneath something trying to do what I was doing, especially solo, there's no way to do it, especially when you have the engine basically hovering over your head. And fun stuff, believe me. But here's the thing. One of the things that I found messing with that truck was it had started to kind of rain a little bit, and I'm underneath the truck, and I'm basically buttoning everything up. The motor mounts were a complete disaster to install. Basically, I was doing everything solo. The engine got a little bit cockeyed and off center. And the funny thing is that the engine, when it came up, it actually slid forward. So this involved me having to use every ratchet strap that I had, try to center the engine, slide everything back, make sure everything is lining up. I've got to make 6 holes in space line up perfectly with 6 other holes. Oh, wait, make that 7 because the power steering pump bracket also had to be a part of this. Anyway, long story short, get it all back together. Fire the truck up, go to move it forward, and just about drive it right through a fence. Here's the weird thing. Somehow or another throughout the entire process, I nicked a brake line. Now, I still have absolutely no idea how I nicked a brake line where I nicked it. This is one of those weird things. It's a nick that's literally that long. It's maybe 3 millimeters at most in length. And it looks like it just got sliced. It was the weirdest thing. And so what was happening is hit the brakes and it just gushes brake fluid out of one of the lines, one of the front lines. No real pressure, and so I'm kind of just idling forward into the fence. Luckily, there was just enough pressure to stop. I had thrown the truck into neutral real quick, so it wasn't any big deal. But now I've got to replace brake lines in this truck. So I'm replacing brake lines, hoses, and everything else. So just a lesson learned here. You just never really know when you're working on something, especially something that old. Anything can happen along the way. So don't take for granted that everything's just going to keep working. And oh yeah, the weird thing about it is that I had kind of moved the brake line a little bit out of the way. Again, I'm dealing with a 50-year-old truck. And by the way, it's not uncommon to have these types of problems, especially on a truck that's, well, I mean, people just learn how to work on cars by working on trucks. They're a lot easier to work on, a lot more room. People turn their kids loose, and this is obviously one of these situations. Anyway, long story short, I thought it was one of the brake lines. Couldn't even find the cut on the other brake line that was actually gouged or gashed or stabbed or whatever. I couldn't even find it. I had to wrap. So what I did was I wrapped a towel around a brake line. We'd get in the truck, slowly depress the brake pedal, get out, get underneath the truck, and look and just see what the deal was. So finally, I got to thinking, I was like, I'm just going to set up my phone. I did that a couple of times, and I thought, man, this is stupid. I'm just going to set up my phone, film it, see where it's coming from, and go back from there. Got the idea. It'd be a whole lot easier to do this with a paper towel. I'm going to do this one more time. Wrapped it around one of the brake lines that looked like it had like a little bit of a rash on it, but it didn't look like anything. Put the paper towel over it, hit the brakes, and it saturated it. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. So anyway, that's how I found the leak. Again, one of those weird situations where there's absolutely no real reason for it to have been nicked, but it was nicked, and things like that happen. But it's and getting the parts is fairly easy, and they're not that expensive. But it's going to be tedious, and that's the other side of it. So along the way, I'll be replacing the brake lines, the hoses, things like that. Basically, it's going to ensure the safety of the truck, which is what you should be doing anyway. If you've got an older vehicle and you're planning on restoring it, this is an area where you don't want to skimp. I mean, make sure that you're getting at least known quality parts. I'm going through LMC truck for this stuff. Probably not the absolute best quality. I looked for some stainless steel lines that were pre-bent, already set up. Couldn't really find those, but looks like the LMC lines are already pre-bent, pre-flanged, all that kind of good stuff. So I'll be able to get that knocked out. But anyway, it's a bit of a trip. So I just wanted to share some of that with you. I gotta get the fan on me over here. I'm getting baked over here. It is muggy as hell too. So it's been raining now for, I don't know, probably the last 3-4 days. So that's what I've been up to, is just dealing with this on again, off again rain. Was going to get the car out a little bit. I'm working on a tune for this thing, and it's basically the car's final tune. I've been admittedly kind of getting away with the tune that's on the car right now. I haven't really done much with the tune. I haven't thrown any timing at it. I haven't pulled any, bobble torque or any tip-in torque or anything like that out of the tune, the stock tune. Basically, just leaving it where it's at. So when I took the car to the track the other night, hot, kind of muggy, and I was getting a bunch of, not a bunch, but just enough to annoy me, short-term knock. A little bit to do with temperature, so I said, screw it, throw a little bit more fuel at it. I'm going to spread that fuel around the table a little bit. You guys that are into tuning, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not just going full rich all the time, but basically just interpolating from your point of view from this side up and out on the load range, and just going to call it good. And it's going to land on whatever it lands on. If it picks up a tenth, if it loses a tenth, it doesn't really matter. The car's quick enough as it is. But the main thing, the main goal, the main fun part about the car is that it's a fun car to play with, fun car to drive. And I'm here to tell you, if you guys are worried about lean or rich or all this other stuff, on the dyno, it literally doesn't matter. The cars, when they're supercharged, especially positive displacement superchargers, like fuel. A lot of it, as a matter of fact. So, going a little bit rich isn't going to hurt anything. I'm not messing with timing too much, just because I tried it already. And this has been a question that's come up too, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so far off topic on the truck, but one of the topics of conversations come up where it's, well, what other things can I do to the tune with this car? I mean, I'm not putting pulleys on it. I'm not doing really anything else to it, because the car's is too damn much fun the way it is now, right? So the question was, what else am I going to do to it tune-wise? And really, it's steps to make the tune either a little bit safer, and maybe it's not safer, but it makes me feel a little bit better for it to have a little bit more fuel in it. But the main thing is to not have a tune that I have to worry about with fuel quality. And the weird thing is here lately, we've been getting some funky ass fuel quality. So I loaded my tune into a buddy of mine's car, and we ran his, data logged it. And here's the funny thing. Both of our cars had 0 knock retard before, and now we were collecting like 2 degrees of knock retard seemingly out of nowhere. So the idea here is, you look at it and go, man, it's probably fuel quality. Fuel quality right now is kind of shitty. I want to make, and the other thing too, by the way, guys, the other question was, well, what am I going to do with the knock sensors? What am I going to do about torque management? What am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about that? Guys, I have got so many, like an obnoxious amount of data logs on this Hellcat, other Hellcats that I've taken to the track. So many street pulls, my car, other cars. I can tell you straight away, I'm not going to get real aggressive with knock sensor sensitivity because I've seen the issues. Admittedly, I'm a little bitch when it comes to knock sensor sensitivity. I could easily pull another 10% out and be within the range of what most guys do, like right off the bat. Here's the problem with that. One of the issues that we run into down here is we get very deep negative density altitudes. The delta between like a 1500 day and a -1,000 foot day is huge when you start talking about just the sheer difference in boost alone. I mean, as you keep sliding down that scale, yeah, the air is denser, but now you're taking dense air and you're compressing dense air, so your boost level goes up. Anyway, long story short, not by much, but just enough to where it wasn't that long ago people were popping these things with known safe tunes. And that's not what I'm looking to do. I'm not looking to get the car in that kind of a situation. I'd rather have it be fun, and instead of running a 997, it runs a 1007 or a 1009. Look, I'm fine with that. I've run a ton of 9-second quarter-mile passes. All of those cars did not have stock pulleys. The only other alternative here is for me to do a straight race gas tune on the car, which is entirely possible. It's pretty easy to do, but it's not really going to make that big of a difference. I mean, it'll help. I can probably pick up somewhere around 30 horsepower, about 35 foot-pounds of torque just by putting a race gas tune in the car. The downside to that is that even if I do that now, hey, CFL, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that very much. With the $9.99 contribution to the cause, brother, I truly appreciate that. Really do. Where was I? Oh no, what I was saying is, if to do that now, put the race gas tune in, add usually 2 degrees of timing on the right hand side of the table, and then kind of blend that in. The good thing about a race gas tune, most people think it's just horsepower. By the way, it's not. I'm picking up everything. Every ounce of ET that I pick up with a race gas tune is on the launch. And more or less at the shift. Anything that it picks up on the back half of the track, you're going to get some of that with timing. You're going to get some of that with a richer fuel mixture, but in reality, it's all really coming from the front portion of that pull. But anyway, that's the only thing that I'm going to be able to get away with. And again, if I do that, I'm not going to do anything nutty with the knock sensor sensitivity because, again, known safe tunes at one point in time when we had some nice, cool, dry air down here were popping Hellcats left and right. It was the Moparmageddon. It's that's where the name of my track day comes from. Moparmageddon is, by the way, t-shirts are coming on that too, by the way. Moparmageddon came from the issues that we had that winter when basically everything let go. So that's kind of the thing that happens. Anyway, the point of all that is that I already pretty much know where I want to keep the car, and that's why I want to focus a little bit more on stuff that's just kind of dumb fun, and to let you guys know some of the weird stuff that happens. I mean, yeah, I get it. The new stuff, it's fast, it's neat. I do all the tuning with a computer, so never have to get your hands dirty. And here it is, I'm working on this old truck, and it somehow or another just gets this weird cut in a brake line that was only, here's the funny thing, the brake line was only moved, it was unbolted from the K-member, and because it's just got these little clips, right? You got like this little round thing in a flat part that just clips to the K-member, or, you know, self-taps into the K-member from the factory. Literally unscrewed it and just moved, didn't bend it, just literally moved it up and around this tubular motor mount support. That's it. That was the extent of that thing even being touched. And even with that, somehow or another, it got gash cut. Again, brake fluid going everywhere, just about straight took out the fence. So anyway, but it's fun to talk about that kind of stuff, because it's not always about, you know, hey, look, the car went 10s again. And hey, look, it did, you know, cams and all this other stuff. It's sometimes fun to get into just the nitty gritty of working on cars, and it's stuff that you guys can do on your own too. If you decided to, you know, take it on, I mean, I got a wall full of wrenches. That's pretty much where I go whenever I need something done to that truck. I got this wall full of wrenches. I don't have to worry about electronics or anything else, at least not yet. Luckily, the truck's been converted to HEI ignition, so it makes my life real nice. But yeah. So anyway, let me get to you guys real quick. I don't want to hold anybody up. CJ's in. What's up, man? Nestor saying the prof. What's up, homie? CJ's asking, since a Mustang is way better than the Challenger, does that mean you want a Mustang with a 5-liter? Well, I think you're getting a little bit ahead of yourself there, CJ. I wouldn't say that it's way better than the Challenger. I'll say that it is way more the darling of the aftermarket. If you want to do mods, then yeah, 5.0 Coyote of any persuasion is going to be a lot easier to do that. I will say that the Mustang with the Mach 1 is starting to move away from the Challenger. It's starting to distance itself. FCA just needs to step up and do an update. So would I jump on board with the Mustang? I'll put it like this. It makes it difficult to have the conversation if I'm buying a new car today. Do I buy a 1320 or do I get a Mach 1? That's really the question here, guys. If I'm talking about Mustang, I'm not talking about the Garden Variety Coyote. I really am talking about the Mach 1. And I get that there's some features that you can get with an automatic that you can't get with the standard, or vice versa, whatever it is. Whatever, that's all parts you can buy from the dealership. My thing is you get yourself a base model Mach 1, and it comes with a lot of bells and whistles and performance parts and things that you would maybe already do to a Mustang anyway. So, I mean, you tell me. That was a good one. So, excuse me. So the idea is, I'm not going to say it's way better, but I'm going to say that it's starting to represent a distancing from the Challenger. And like I said in the last 3-hour marathon video, it's not about is it better, but the thing is that Mustang is giving Mopar owners a reason to go back to Ford. And with as many people as came over to Mopar from Ford, it's got a lot of people really turning their heads right now. I mean, look, if the price is the same, makes it tough. And you got to remember, tire for tire, they are very similar in terms of ET and mile per hour. In fact, Mustang a lot mile per hour at 1320. Sam saying, what up, Mason? What up, Sam? Slime Cutie got 2 thumbs up. I like it. Let's see. CJ's asking if I plan on doing or adding air conditioning to the 72. Possibly. If the truck was an AC truck from the factory, but it's missing pretty much everything, I would probably go with vintage air and call it good. I wouldn't go back to the factory system. Xcash said, I'm going to be doing a refresh on my Pontiac 350 to make it reliable. Should I take my heads to a machine shop or just buy a new complete? I want to have a high lift roller cam. It's a good question. It's kind of a bit of a conundrum. What I would do is I would buy new heads. I really would. I wouldn't even mess with the stock heads. I mean, if you're talking about putting a cam in the car, you're going to want to get the most out of the cam, and you're just not going to get there with the stock heads. I'm in the same boat you are too, bro. Look, my 400 that I've got, I mean, it comes with boat anchors for cylinder heads. It's got a non-existent camshaft and a 2-barrel. I mean, the truck will do good, I'm sure, to spin to even 3,000 RPM with the heads and the cam that's in it, especially with that intake manifold. I'd probably pick up 40 horsepower just with an intake manifold and a carburetor. So the thing is you got to look at it from this point of view. Where is your budget right now, and really what do you want to put the car together for? Do you want to put the car together to drive and enjoy and make noise? It'll do that now. It'll also, I mean, it'll light the tires up, I'm sure, with no problem. In stock form, if you really wanted it to. But if you want to get any real performance out of it, if you're taking those things off, keep them, practice, learn how to do porting or whatever with those heads, but they're practically garbage. Get you a set of good aftermarket heads, Eddies, TFS, Dart, whoever you want to go through, but that's the direction I would go with that. CJ is saying RT Life has a 2017 Dodge Charger RT with a 5.7. It's been stroked to 397. Is making well over 500 horsepower NA. A lot of them are. Wouldn't even worry about it, but you know, take it to the track and see how it does. CFL is asking, who else other than Mickey Thompson makes 305 45 17 drag radial? Nitto does. He's on his third defective set. Oh, damn. That does suck. No, 305 45 17, you can get those in, I think, G2s, if I'm not mistaken. And if you can, check those out, especially if you're looking to just stick with the radials. I'm pretty sure you can get them in the Tri-5s also. Boxcar is saying, and again, thank you very much, CFL. I appreciate it, brother. Boxcar is saying, I thought you were a Mustang guy. What happened? Well, I've always been into Mustangs. I still have my old Fox body. It's at my dad's house. But what happened? I mean, dude, everybody's got a Mustang. I want to try something different, something fun, something cool. And so since my days with Mustangs, I've had Vipers, 3 of them, Corvettes, 2 of those. Now 2 Challengers, Lightnings for a couple of those. So probably miss my Lightnings the most, to be honest with you. So let's see. CJ is just saying, imagine if Ford made a 6.2 Coyote. Yeah, a lot of folks have said that, but problem is getting that to pass EPA. Slumkute is asking, do you have an opinion on Injected Engineering's gasohol system on a fully modded Hellcat? Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, what he's talking about is he's talking about the fuel pumps. I am a huge fan of that kit. It's $1,300 kit, fairly easy to put in. It's one of these types of kits that if you're going to make 1,000 horsepower to the flywheels, or say, you know, 850 to 900 to the rear wheel, something around in that area, that Injected Engineering gasohol kit will cover you. I believe it's twin 450s. And look, I get it. It's not a full 4 system, but the factory Hellcat fuel system's fairly robust. It's bigger. It's more capable than the 392. You wouldn't want to try to run that on a 392 boosted application. You can go aftermarket fuel system. But on the Hellcat, you don't have to worry about that. Here's the thing, though. Just understand that you install that kit. Don't hook up booster pumps to it. Don't try to extend it. Don't try to get more out of it than, again, that rated 1,000 horsepower-ish range on E85. Again, I've used them on customers' cars. 0 complaints. Very easy. Techs had no problem installing them. They actually liked it because, again, you're not screwing with an entire fuel system. It's a pain in the ass to install. Labor alone on the full 4 kits is a son of a bitch, to say the least. So value per dollar, very high on the charts on that one. Slash is saying, a Scat Pack with me in it weighs 43.75, no passenger seat, no back seat, MTT Street R's. I can't get out of the 8-second 8th mile time. I desperately need a tune. Well, yeah, I would say a tune for sure, but it depends on your DA. I mean, if you're running this thing in 3,200 feet, even in 2,700 feet, it's going to be tough to get out of that 8-second range. Even low 8s, I would see it happening in that air, but getting much quicker than that, you know, 1/10 of a second means a lot more in 1/8 mile than it does in, or it shows a lot more in 1/8 mile than it does in 1/4 mile. So, you know, and keep in mind, a really quick version is still only going to be like in the 750, 740 range. So, yeah, I know on the track it's a lot, but that's in really good air at sea level. So just kind of giving you an idea. I'm not sure where the DA is where you're at, but you got to have at least a barometer to go with. Let's see, CJ saying, for me, I prefer the Scat Pack Charger over the Mustang. Oh, because it's 4 doors. What the hell blew up my face? And then it's practical. Yeah, a lot of people feel the same way, CJ. Maha is saying, been listening to a lot of Mustang guys talk down the new Mach 1. They feel like it's just another bullet with a new dress and panties. Hey, look, man, a new dress and panties will get me fired up any day of the week. So if they're complaining about a new dress and panties, maybe they need to start shopping somewhere else. No, seriously, though. They need to start shopping somewhere else. X-Catch saying, thanks for the advice. I just want a nice weekend cruiser with a radical idle that I can go long distances. Oh, yeah, you'll be fine with that then, man. You'll be good with that. Let's see. Let's see. Oops, go. Nestor's saying, what is a good air fuel range tolerance for a 392 Scat in a while daily driven in a while just cruising in a wide open throttle? So here's the funny thing: Hemis love fuel. So this is where the people that speak fluent Mopar will start to get real annoyed when you start hearing about what other guys can get away with air fuel. So you're going to command 14.7. Oh, he's got the arm flex too. You're going to command 14.7 or equivalent, I should say, your equivalency ratio, because as you know, Mopars will have weird stoichiometric values built in. Hellcats are notorious for this, where 13.6 is a stoichiometric value that you're starting off with, but that's not an equivalent. It's not going to command 13.6. It's actually commanding 14.7. That's what you see in the tune. So keep in mind that's what you're commanding. And that's what is being delivered. But for NA, I'll go so far as to say 12.2. I know it sounds weird, but 12.2, 12.4, 12.6 is about as rich. I mean, it's about as lean as I would run that car. And that's for the 392s. Hey, Sean, thanks very much, man. I appreciate it. But yeah, I know it sounds rich. I get it. But Hemis do better with fuel than they do with timing. That's the other thing. If you're asking me how much fuel, next question is typically how much timing. Don't stray that far from stock. It's just not needed. You're not going to pick up much. Even with 2, 3, 4 degrees of timing, you won't see anything on the dyno. And the car will start to act a little bit stupid when it comes to knock retard values. So just stuff that I found on the dyno, stuff that I found with tuning, getting too far away from stock, cars and trucks just really don't do that well, getting all the timings thrown at them. Where you pick up performance is in the transmission tune. And mainly that, all you're doing is you're really optimizing shift levels and making them work with the gear ratios and the torque curve, where the torque curve starts to, from your point of view, where torque curve starts to drop, horsepower keeps going up because horsepower is a function of torque. Just want to make sure that you are making the shift before the horsepower curve starts to plateau. And thanks again, Sean. I appreciate it, brother. You're saying a nugget for 4-barrel on the 400 needs more cam. Needs a lot more cam. It needs a lot more cylinder head. It needs a lot more brake lines right now. It needs brake lines and leaf springs more than it needs anything else. Really needs brake lines. I still am trying to figure out how in the world I nicked it, but somehow or another I did. CJ's asking, what do you think of muscle cars that are non-American, like the ones from Australia and Canada? Well, Canada gets a lot of their hot rods from us, but I mean, there's muscle cars all over the place. You got to remember, muscle cars come in all flavors. All right. So obviously, when you asked about the Aussies have been doing hot rods every bit as good, in some cases even better than us Yanks over here. I mean, You know, you look at the Utes that are super cool. Look up Mopar Ute, by the way. That's a pretty badass rig. But the XB Falcon, the Holdens, those are the cars that were really holding it down for those guys. I mean, and they all do it with 4 doors too. They love 4 doors over there, which I think is cool as shit. And it makes sense. It's practical. You got 4 seats, you got 4 doors. You know, just why wouldn't you? So anyway, love what they're doing. But hey, look at the Germans. I mean, anything Mercedes-Benz has always been a bit of a hot rod. I mean, BMW too to a certain extent, but really the Benz, no doubt about it. So, and don't forget about the Brits. I mean, you know, obviously you're aware of the British Roadsters, but you also had cars like the, you know, the Capri, which over there is kind of a little hot rod. So you gotta, depending on your definition of muscle car, there's all kinds of little muscle cars running around that you may not have ever considered that would actually, you know, surprise you, to say the least. Sean's asking if I was in the market for a new naturally aspirated pony car, I'd have to take a hard look at the Mach 1. So I would probably put some aftermarket shaker on it or something and go try to run 10s on motor. Let's see. Sean's asking, does your and I would agree with that too. Sean's asking, does your 400 even have enough cam to need a 4-barrel or just a good healthy 2-barrel? There's enough cam in it. There's enough displacement. There's actually enough draw to where a 4-barrel would actually do me a little bit of good. But the other reason to put a 4-barrel on it is, actually there's 2 reasons. One, get some performance out of it. Even with that paltry cam and the heads that it's got, it could definitely use a little bit of help. Although it does have a Rochester 2-barrel on it, which normally would be actually a pretty decent carburetor, it does need a little bit more. That you can get away with that on a 350, but with the extra displacement of the 400, even with the slightly lower RPM, you've got to have a little bit of breathing room there. And 2, to put the 4-barrel on, I can put an air gap on it. And to put an air gap on it means that I'm, again, you know, getting some of the heat out of the fuel range, you know, just basically doing whatever I can to mitigate the under hood temps, because that is, with this new E10, it is driving me nuts with vapor lock. So again, that's the whole reason for the headers and the new style of headers and the motor mounts and all this other stuff, is just to try to mitigate as much heat, get as much heat out of there as I can, get the headers away from the fuel rails as much as I possibly can, and not to mention clean up the install because it looked like hammered ass. So there's that also. And again, moving into probably running a electric fuel pump with a true regulated fuel system on it. That's going to all eliminate any issues with that truck anyway, with the vapor lock. I mean, that's just the issue that I'm running into right now, is just so overwhelmingly annoying that it's going to take that. But it's not the truck's fault. The truck's cool as it sits. It's just that with the lower boiling point of this modern fuel, it's made to be run at higher bar levels. In other words, higher pressures. Those higher pressures, the fuel can't boil. It's just the pressure is too high, so you don't get vapor lock. But you know, on these low pressure systems, especially with a mechanical pump where it's drawing fuel on the backside, and then even though it is a return style system, it only returns at the pump. And the idea with that, I'm assuming, is that it helps to keep the pump cool. The fuel's not staying in the pump getting hot. Problem is that it's still a deadhead system from the pump to the carburetor. And that's where all the problems are coming in. So that's what I'm up against. Brendan's saying, which is a better car? Oh, I'm sorry, missed it. He's saying, hey Mason, sold my Scat Pack and looking into my next vehicle. I love going to the track. I'm a bit all over the map for my next car. I'm looking between a 1314 Shelby or a Gen 4 Viper. Which is a better car? The 1314 Shelby is the better car. And it's better on several areas. It just depends on what you want to do with the car, bro. I mean, look, I love Fortune Vipers. They're a lot of fun to drive. The suspension geometry is far and away better than the first couple of gens. A little bit safer too, but I like it's not that I don't like the Viper as much. It's just that there's a cool factor with the GT500 that the Viper just doesn't quite get to, especially the RT10s. If you get a GTS, it's a different story, but for me, it's Gen 2 GTS, Gen 2 RT10, Gen 5. Those are my favorites, and then the rest of them are all really cool, don't get me wrong. But for me, golly, man, I mean, they're about the same price, or at least they're kind of in the same ballpark. And GT500s are just so much fun, and they don't put you off as much. Plus, if something goes south on a GT500, it's a lot less expensive to fix than it is on a Viper. Vipers just are not that well supported by not only the factory, but even the aftermarket. They're just not that supported of a car, and so you run into those types of problems with it too. It's easier to get parts for a GT500, and there's a lot more resources available for you. So that would be my route. Plus, I'm biased as shit towards the GT500. Now, if you're to say which one would I get, GT500 or Gen 2 Viper, I would tell you to run like hell away from the Gen 2 Viper. Back in the day, that's what I used to run. That's what I campaigned. That's what I raced. Look, if you can drive a Gen 2 Viper, then you can drive anything. They do nothing well aside from look good once you really start pushing to the limit, unless you track prep them. And then they're great. Once you learn how to drive them and you understand mainly how to set the thing up for corners, especially sweepers, with the inherent understeer that they have, you'll be in pretty good shape. You'd be surprised how some of the training or rules that you may be used to don't. I'm not going to say they don't apply, because they do. The theory does, but the way those things understeer and the way they try to step out, they're heavier in the rear. You actually drive them the same way you would drive like a GT2 Porsche, and you set them up with the understanding that there is an inherent amount of understeer, and you just walk the rear end around apexes. It's, long story short, they're a lot of fun. Slime's asking, does Pikes offer mail tune service? I don't see that offered on their site. I'm doing a heads cam or Hellcat, very similar to Bravo package, and will need a full tune. If you get with Alex, he can remote tune the car, but there is no mail order. In other words, you don't get the tune and you send it in and you bring it back. Doesn't do any of that. He can do live remote tuning, and that is far and away better anyway. But you will have to have HP tuner software, credits, and everything else. But he can do remote tuning. My thing is this, though. This was my big deal when it came to remote tuning. The cost of it is still going to be about the same, because it's about twice as much of a pain in the ass, and he doesn't have the data. I mean, he's got the data right there. He's going to be logged into your computer through TeamViewer 13. So you need to have TeamViewer 13 on your computer. Your hotspot, your phone's got to be able to tether to your computer. You're going to need to have, obviously, your HP tuner software, credits, and all that other stuff running, so he can see everything that's going on there. He'll take over your computer, ask you to make the hits, do certain things. You'll be an active part of this, because you'll be, off on, sequences with the button. So just know that coming into it, but it can be done, and he does quite a few remote tunes. So hit him up, tell him I said what's up. Let's see. But he can't get you set up, and that's actually a fun one. Oh, one other thing. Before you do this, change the oil, full tank of fresh gas, go over it with a fine-tooth comb, check to make sure that you don't have any mechanical issues whatsoever. We've run into so many problems with cars, especially if it's got long tubes on it. If it doesn't have long tubes, you're probably okay. But do yourself a favor, do a data log on the car. Make sure that you don't have anything too far out of whack. If you haven't already started working on the car, if you're not going to put the exhaust on or anything like that, just check it for leaks. Check for exhaust leaks, check for intake leaks. Just check for whatever you can before you start messing with the tune. The extra hour worth of time that you spend sniffing around that car before you take it to the drag strip will save you hours upon hours and dollars upon dollars for tunes, retunes, rechecks, things like that. Because there is nothing worse than getting started on a remote tune only to have the initial data set start indicating that there's something wrong with the car. And every single time it's, there's nothing wrong with this car. This car isn't great. It's always mechanical. There's certain things, I get it, every Mopar is a snowflake. They're all a little bit different. I understand it. But there are certain aspects of it that are very much identical. And that's, if there's something wrong with the car, it's going to show up in the initial data log. So just know that coming into it. And the procedure is there'll be a base tune that he'll load into the car. And then from there, he'll start checking things out. Oh, yeah. Also, make sure that you got your build sheet 100% prepped and ready to go. We need to know pulley size upper, pulley size lower. Did you pin your crank? Because if you didn't pin your crank and you spin the crank while this is all happening, that'll get ugly. So make sure you pinned your crank. What injectors? Who did you get your injectors from? Are they used or are they new? These are the types of things that you need to know. What exhaust is on the car? Are you running catalytic converters? If so, are they metal substrate or are they ceramic? All of that is stuff that's going to need to be known. So, plugs are you running? NGK, blah, 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 7s is what you'll be putting in that car. So, what fuel pump do you have? All of these things are going to be needed to know. So just make sure you have that list ready to go that you can get to him so that he can go through that list, prep, and get the base tune ready to go for you. X-Cash is saying, have you ever heard of a V8 Mercedes with a nice sounding exhaust kit? Oh my God, it sounds amazing. Yes, my E63 with a mid-muffler delete. As Shawnee's saying, sounds like you're in the market for a Flonic spacer on that 400. Yeah, except in this case, it's got to be the 2-bolt, 2-barrel manifold Flonic spacer. Pain in the just. We're just coming into the disco malaise era for vehicles. Still the styling, but we're starting to get into that funky ass bean counter bullshit with this truck. So yeah, if for no other reason, I need to get a 4-barrel on there so that I have, if something does go wrong on the induction side, I've got an easy swap in, swap out scenario. Right now, I do not have that scenario, and I can't just go to the auto parts store and go, hey, I need a 4-barrel. Because really at this stage of the game, it's a generic 4-barrel works. I don't really want vacuum secondaries, so I'm probably going to end up with them anyway. Would prefer to have, very much so, would prefer to have mechanical secondaries. What I'm looking at right now to go on that thing. I just never did like, I mean, I can definitely do well without vacuums. Anyway, but this 2-bolt, but if you guys aren't familiar with it, what I'm talking about is you have your 2-barrel carburetor. Let's say this is your 2-barrel carburetor here. Imagine, you know, this, there's only 2 bolts that hold it to the intake manifold. Now the carburetor has 4 bolts, but it's a wider bolt pattern. And so because it's only 2 bolts that hold it, can you believe that, by the way? 2 bolts hold this thing on there. The things that you learn, okay, this is stuff that I never ever would have learned as a kid. You know, I just, who do you, like what? So anyway, that's what I'm playing with right now. Catalyst, thank you very much. Appreciate that. $10 contribution to the cause. We all be going towards my brake lines that I ordered today. By the way, your contribution dollars are already at work, so thank you very much. Saying, I see some folks ceramic coat their cars. Is it worth doing? Yes, it is. So there's a lot of folks that swear by it. Friends of mine have spent a ton of money doing this to their car. And the funny thing is initially, I was like, what in the hell are you talking about? Ceramic coat? That's stupid. The reality is it stays cleaner longer. And to me, that means something. It retains the shine a lot better, even than just waxing or clay barring or whatever. You can't really tell in this camera. My car is filthy as shit. It never gets this dirty, but In fact, it's been just sitting in the garage, but if it did have that coating on it, it would be a lot cleaner than it is now. The other cool thing about it is it protects your car from scratches, in that you don't really have to dry the car off the way that you would have to dry it off with even a wax job. The water just sheets off of the thing. And it lasts for a long time. I mean, we're talking, I know ceramic jobs that guys have told me are 2 years old. Now, granted, these cars stay in the garage. They mainly take them out at night for trips to Mexico with their friends. But those cars, they look amazing just like they did before. And the last time they washed them was 6 months ago. They just don't really get dirty. And any kind of cleanup takes very little to no time. So I would recommend it. Just know that it's not cheap. And it's not easy, but if you're using quality components, you can get it done yourself. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But thank you for the contribution. I appreciate that, man. Sean saying, we're going to have to start calling this channel midweek with Mason. I like it. CJ saying, I wish Americans can build utes the way they did with the Elcos and Rancheros back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Well, I mean, they could. There was even talk at one point about Ford bringing over, I thought I was about to be wearing this Diet Coke, about Ford bringing over their utes, but it never happened. Let's see. No, CFL saying, checked out Nitto on those 305s and they don't make that size. Or MT's just a bad tire. I'm on the only guy who's had 3 bad sets that shake like hell. I've had one set of SS's that acted like a bit of an ass. They could have just had a bad run, though. That's been a while back, though, admittedly. The last set, well, I mean, you guys know, I mean, I run the ET Street R's on mine, and I have yet to have a bad set of ET Street R's. So it might have just been a bad batch, would be my guess. But I did have one funky set of ET Street SS's. I'm sorry, I'm running ET Street R's. I had one funky set of ET Street SS's, but they weren't altogether that bad. So it sucks that you're having problems with those. And I'm surprised. I thought Nitto would make those. 305, 45, 17. I'm surprised that they don't. Anyway, that's the size that I run for my ET Street R's. I'm just surprised I don't have those. Shawnee's saying, I'm torn between getting the 9.5 and the 10.5. Just get the 9.5s, bro. They're lighter. You can, well, that's what I'm running. I'm running 305, 45, 17, ET Street R's on 9.5s. Hook great, fantastic footprint, real consistent. I mean, what's not to love? But, I mean, if you like the look, really the only reason why you go 10.5 is it's really more for an aesthetic, but I don't know. I like the way mine looks, so. CJ saying, but like Scotty Kilmer said, German cars are complete money pits. They can be. They can be. Let's see. CJ's talking about a truck. Let's see. 6.2 with some mods makes some pretty good power. I would like to see the official results of that. David saying, just got my 5.7 Challenger E4 supercharger. Hey, there you go. Dyno Tune put down 485 to the wheels, torque not far behind. Did the trans tune, shift points, etc. This car is now a blast. That's what I've been telling you guys. Every time somebody came in with an E-Force, that was like the car that I wanted to drive. It didn't matter if it was a Nag 1 car, an 8-speed car, whatever. Once Alex was done tuning it, I could not wait to drive that car because they always ran good. They were punchy, real fat, meaty torque curve, just a fun car to drive. And so he would get done with it. He would take it out, final run, and if it was a trans tune, on a lot of the trans tunes, I have a different driving style than he does, and so it's a good idea to get 2 different opinions, so to speak, on just transmission feel, and because it's such a subjective thing. But every time the E-Force cars would come in for their tune, because the freaking stock tune is so soft on those things, I just loved driving those things. So I know exactly what you got. I know exactly what it feels like to drive. And I promise you, you're going to have a ball with that thing. Rip's saying, hey, y'all. What's up, Rip? Let's see. Rip's saying you got the 305/45 Mickey Thompson E2 Street R17s, and one of them cannot be balanced because it's just not round. I've heard, so here's the thing. I've heard of the tires not being concentric. In other words, they're just not round. You'd be surprised how many things are simply not round that are supposed to be round on your car, by the way. But yeah, that sucks, man. I'm sorry to hear that. Just get them out there and do the self-rounding. Just do a nice long burnout. Edward's saying, hey, B, last time I commented on here, I had a P2172 code for sudden airflow detected, sudden throttle body actuator code. Did a compression test and found the intake spring was broke. Really? That's nutty. For sudden airflow detected, yeah, I guess it would if it was, interesting. Well, I'm sorry to hear you had a busted spring, but thank you for sharing that. That's actually really cool info, man. I probably wouldn't have looked there first. I probably would have found it, but damn, that's crazy. So it was an intake valve spring. Weird. Well, at least you found it. And again, thank you for letting us know what that was. That helps the community out entirely. So thank you, sir. Rip is saying, and I hate their customer service because they say once you have them mounted and balanced, they will not take them back. But how are you supposed to know they're good unless you have them mounted and balanced? I know what you mean, man. That's a pain in the ass. Slime's asking, what do you think about long tubes on a full mod Hellcat with 265 upper or lower E85? Will it lower boost slightly and increase flow horsepower? Is it worth it? So here's the long-standing dilemma. Do you go long tubes or do you not go long tubes? Here's the problem. So this is a tale of two Hellcats. One is Bravo package with the factory manifolds headers with no cats. The other is a Bravo package with long tubes and essentially no cats. It had cats, but the previous tune fried the cat. It was a bad. Anyway, long tubes with no cats. This is a car that I really did like. 275 upper with a 10% lower. Here's the thing. The cars on the dyno were all but identical in terms of power output. The car that made the more power was the one with long tubes, and it had a 262 gear, which can sometimes play with numbers just a little bit on the dynos. Just how the acceleration rate versus time affects the calculation. It's typically not by much, but it's an odd percentage difference. We consider once you start getting above 800 horsepower, you start to think of, numbers like 10, 8, 12, 15, kind of almost falls into this range. It's what's known as within the noise of the dyno, especially when you have different ratios involved. So to answer the question, at that power level, it basically made the same power. Now that's 1 7/8 inch headers though. And at that pulley ratio, there really wasn't any difference, to be honest with you. I don't think there was any real difference in boost at that ratio. Because there's a lot of airflow going on there. Now, if you were to run them at stock boost levels, I would say that you wouldn't get much of a gain. I think that would still carry over. I would still say that 1 7/8 might be a little bit light for that power level. I would say the 2-inch would probably be the way that I would go. Again, we're talking over 700 horsepower here. You're starting to walk into that 2-inch-ish range, and they're all going to be a pain in the ass to install anyway. So, why not get more for your pain in the ass, right? But the reality is that we just didn't ever really see that much. And at that 2-inch, by the way, you will start to see a drop in boost. You might see a drop as much as 1.5 pounds of boost. And that's really where, again, we're talking now about stock boost levels. That's where it becomes less appetizing to put a set of headers on, because even though the power may be kind of the same, the manifolds will actually make a little bit more power just because there is more boost. Also, to that point, at the lower air demand rates, even though let's say you're at 6 or 8 pounds of boost, more or less partial throttle, it can feel a little bit numb with the big headers on the car. So that's where the smaller headers kind of play in a little bit. It just depends on what you're going after. You're going after max power, bigger cubes, big boost. Go with the long tubes just because they're going to offer up more flow, a bit more scavenging, and it'll give you a little bit of headroom to play with pulleys because a little bit more efficient. Also, if you're going with different cams, it can help a little bit there too. The big thing though is that with a positive displacement supercharger, the scavenging is taken care of by this big boy right here, typically, especially with a wide lobe separation angle cam. You're just not going to get the level of scavenging that you would out of, let's say, if you put a cam in here that was more aggressive, really trying to focus on, say, a little bit more bottom end torque or mid-range power, tighter lobe separation angle, then that combined with the long tubes, that's a bonus. That's a good thing to do. But just in testing and the things that I've seen, you're just really not going to get there unless you're driving a lot of boost. You're not really going to get, I think, where you might want to be with the long tubes. Better off going with the stock manifolds. And by the way, bro, you got to remember that there's guys running mid nines, like 930, 940, 950 on stock manifolds with just a JBA cat delete. So believe me, if there was, I'm kind of cutting to the chase here finally, but if there was such a big reason to go with long tubes, they would have done it. And these are guys, again, that are all deep into the nines. So take everything like that with a grain of salt. Sean's saying, here we go. Headers should do more on a Hellcat for the money than they do, but they do sound amazing. That is true. They do sound good. CJ's talking about some video of a TA with a 5.7 Hemi with a Hellcat blower. Sounds like you kind of went around your ass to get your elbow on that one. But there was a lot of, to each his own, different combinations do well. Robert B saying, Brother B, been a minute, had to click. Hey, what's up, Robert? Hope everything's going good, brother. Shawnee's saying, I have 315 Nitto 5R Nittos for daily driven tires on my Hellcat with very good luck. 161 60-foot time at the track with full weight. That's right. He's getting pretty good ETs out of those things, and a 161 is nothing to sneeze at with full street cars. So. Catalyst 99 is saying, do you switch out your tires for going to the track versus driving the car locally? Yes, I do. And it is justification for getting a set of bravadas for the car like my buddy Chris did and just run bravadas all the time. He's got 2 rear sets, 1 street, 1 strip, leaves the fronts alone. Bravadas are significantly lighter than these slingshots that come factory, but I don't know. It's if I just need to go buzz up somewhere, I might run with these tires. But for the most part, if she's wearing these shoes, she's going to the dance. If she's not, and I'm in my street gear, then it's basically street gear for the street. Which reminds me, pretty much everything in the fleet except the C25 needs tires right now. So that's a real truth. Let's see. Ed was saying it was pushing compression back in the intake manifold. Let's see. What are we talking about, Ed? Oh, it's pushing. Oh, talking about that part of it. Yeah, no kidding, man. That's such a weird deal. Yeah, no, you've got this pressure wave that's just bouncing around back in there as that piston's moving up and down. Makes perfectly good sense. It's just, what the hell? That would have been found on a smoke test, but still, it's kind of crazy. Dr. Div's checking in saying, B. Mason, I'm in, except I'll be in bed soon, though. Going to be a long weekend. I understand that. Dr. Div saying, go long tubes. Edward was saying, I put stock intake spring. Oh, yeah, I got to get with you. By the way, I found, I don't know if you caught the early part of it, I found the broken brake line. It's the brake line. By the way, to answer the debate, the short reservoir front brakes. Here's the thing. It was on the feed line to the passenger side front. It runs along the K-member. If you can imagine the K-member, the front of the K-member being where you are, it ran along the back of the K-member, up over the K-member, and then over to the caliper. Check this out. Somehow or another at the back, this is in an area where it was never, how do you put this? It was never even touched, had no clip anywhere near it, wasn't even jostled or moved. Anyway, that's where it broke. That's where it cut. It has this little gash in it. So, and it's facing the K-member. So you can't see it. So anyway, long story short, I'll be giving you a shout tomorrow. Keep your ears on, bro. Edward's saying, I put a stock intake spring in it. It runs great, but I'm getting a strange noise only during deceleration. I'm currently putting a set of pack springs in it now. Put the I always recommend PSI 15-16s, but pack makes a good spring too, so I wouldn't knock you for using those. Rift is asking, is a cam tune like a Diablo Sport tune worth it on a stock Hellcat? No, it isn't. I would not do that. Not on a Hellcat. If you've got to drive 6 hours to get to your tuner, then drive the 6 hours. Look, we had guys shipping their cars in from Minnesota. We had guys shipping their cars, all over the country. Northeast, Northwest, Chicago. Had a few cars from Chicago, as a matter of fact. Chi-Town did us good, too. Detroit, we had guys from Oklahoma City. Pretty much everywhere. They would trailer their cars in or just have them picked up and brought down. I get it. That's a very expensive proposition, but no, don't go with the not on your Hellcat. It's not. This isn't where you've got too much of an investment sitting there. If something does go south, it's going to be way too expensive. Let's see. Edward's saying, as far as tire talk, I went from Mickey Thompson Street SS's to the Nexen drag spec radials that come on the 1320. Ride quality is much better, and my 0 to 60 went from 350 to 306, 392 6-speed. That's real nice. Good intel on those Nexens then. I like the sound of that. That's cool. If they work great, that's awesome. CFL James saying, mine are the R's. Gotcha. Dr. Div saying, dyno next week, sir. I know it. I have to run out there and check out. So, by the way, guys, Dr. Div is getting a dyno next week. And no, the C25 is not going to go on the dyno because we don't have 5 years for that thing to make a pull on that thing. Dr. Div saying pushing compression into the intake. It's got a bent valve. Actually had a broke intake valve spring. But that would have been my next thought as well. I was going to think that. Anyway, I got to give you a shout tomorrow. The brake lines are already on the way. I just got to check and see if I've got a 1-piece or a 2-piece feed to the rear. I'm doing all of the hard lines in the truck. I'm just going to get them all knocked out, and the soft lines up front. Let's see, Robert, and probably I got to find the soft lines for the rear too. Robert B is saying S197 stage. There we go. S197 stage 3 Roush stick car, fun car by the way. About to make 6 1/4-ish wheel horsepower. Any thoughts on going with a 17 over or 15-inch rear? If a lot of the car's racing duty is on the street, stick with the 17s. If most of your duty is on the street, that means mainly roll. I would like to see it have more stability than anything else. I don't like the 15s, especially from a hard dig at like 65. When you get into that power to weight ratio, some of the cars tend to get a little bit wandery, if you know what I mean, with that tire and wheel setup on a hit like that. So you're still a little bit lower than the cars that do get a little bit sketchy, but at least with a 17, you'll have a little bit more of an overhead for recovery. The 17s, though, obviously you're going to be needing to run a drag radial at minimum. So, you know, definitely make sure you're going that route. Aside from that, I mean, you'll be pretty much okay. And also too, if you're going 15s and you want to go just big tire with it, or, you know, big for the street, that'll work fine too. It'll hook and it'll look kind of tough. So it just depends on what you're going to be doing with the car on your way out there. If you want to do a little bit of playing around, you know, high speed cruise, things like that, that 17 is going to be far and away more predictable. It's going to be a better tire, be able to manage speed a lot better than that 15 will. And that is coming from experience. Hey, thanks, Sean. I appreciate that, brother. Saying, good night, everybody, and a nugget to give Rev on. True that. It's coming soon. I can't even... You have no idea. It doesn't even show up in the camera either. It really is filthy, though. So, it's coming. But thank you very much, brother. I do appreciate it. Robert B is asking, also recommend a good tire for 6-speed 75-25 street strip duty car. Right on the ET Street R bias plies with matching bias ply front. They're lightweight. I used to run bias plies on my Vet. The only thing, and the Viper too, for that matter. The only thing I don't like about bias plies is they get that shimmy to them. And yeah, ask Racer X all about bias plies on his car too, by the way. One thing I don't like about bias plies on an independent rear car is that the rear's never planted. The geometry is constantly changing. And bias plies, what'll happen is that if you guys haven't ever driven a car, I'm going to show you exactly what driving a bias ply car feels like. I'm in a swivel chair, okay? I want you to sit down in a swivel chair, stick your arms out like you've got them on the steering wheel. I'm going to kind of hold them up here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. When you start to get to speed and the car gets under load, especially with an independent rear like what our cars have, you'll start to get the bias ply shimmy. Now, the car is moving, and this is just the tire. I'm a little bit exaggerating that, but not by much. The tires are kind of shimmying a little bit. Now, the car is going straight. I mean, just like a fish, the way it swims, you know, it's moving up. But the thing is that it's not going straight like this. It just kind of feels like it's, you know, just swimming along. That's the bias ply shimmy, and it's not altogether the most. It's kind of nerve-wracking, especially once you get to speeds above, say, 135, 140. Some cars, mainly independent rear cars, solid rear axle cars, not so much. But yeah, you'll get this. You'll get this kind of shimmy. You just have to drive through it. And this isn't where you start making corrections. You don't. That's not what you do. The car will actually, you'll make a tiny correction, maybe, just a little bit. But the problem is that guys will start to overcorrect, and then you start to oscillate the shimmy. So now the car's really all out of whack, and they get on the brakes and they go, oh fuck, and they turn weird color shades of like white and green. I've had cars do bias ply shimmies at 180, 185 miles an hour, and it's not all that fun. So just kind of a word to the wise. Stick with the radials if you're messing around on the street or at the track for that matter. For cars that are this heavy, I mean, if you got a lightweight car, it's a different thing. Edward Schaefer saying, Doc Diff, oh, he's hollering out at Doc Diff after I changed the spring. It would hold compression fine. So yeah, he's, oh, and everything looks like smoke test didn't reveal the broken spring, probably because the exhaust valve was on a base circle. Typically, you would hear it percolating through there. Typically. Machine checking in saying, yo, what's up, man? What's your thoughts on the C8 Z06 being a flat plane, and how does it compare to the cross-plane boost capabilities? So, to me, 6 to 1, half a dozen to another. Cross-plane is fine. I mean, obviously, guys have been making tons of power, tons of boost with cross-planes. Guys like flat planes, they'll talk up flat planes in that the turbo gets a better pulse signal, and it works better for twin turbo setups because of that pulse signal. To me, I mean, look, how many 8-second cars and 7-second trucks with cross-plane cranks that are running around there. They don't seem to have any problem creating boost. So I don't really see that being an issue one way or another. If the question is, which one is more efficient, I guess that, by rights, the flat plane crank is, but mainly only with a turbo. I know that, so here's the problem. When you get into flat plane cranks, you have primary and secondary harmonics that come into play. And with the uneven firing order of a cross plane, that unevenness cancels out or I should say mitigates significantly some of the second tier harmonic issues that you'll run into with a flat plane. A flat plane is basically just 2 4-cylinders running in concert. Basically, bam, 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 bam. And the issue that you run into is if it's a small V8, like say it's a 3.5 liter like a Ferrari, maybe even a 4 liter, you're not going to run into as many issues with that second tier because the displacement is small. Just the size of the unit is just smaller. But 4 cylinders, the higher the displacement, the larger the displacement, the higher that second tier harmonic affects the assembly. That's why you don't see really big 4 cylinders turn high RPM. That second tier harmonic would just rattle the thing completely apart. You'd have to have counterbalance shafts and everything else. And a 4 cylinder is supposed to be smooth inherently. That's why you can see a motorcycle engine spin to 16, 18, 20,000 RPM. But if you tried to do that with, say, a 2.5 liter inline 4, it would blow itself completely apart because of the second tier harmonics. So for me, on a turbo, in that respect, it really doesn't matter. And I think it's really starting to get into the splitting hairs aspect of things. When we start getting into the, flat plane versus cross plane thing. Rich saying, when I put my unlocked PCM in, I was told to first put the Diablo tune on and then wait for the email tune from Hemi Fever. Was just curious if I'm not feeling any difference from the can tune. Yeah, probably not. I mean, like I say, there's not much in a can tune because all of the liability in tuning, you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you've got too hot of a tune for fuel quality, human error, all of that kind of stuff comes into play there. They're just really soft tunes. And that's something you got to think about for a minute. The factory tune has to deal with the dumbass factor of the bag of mush that's behind the steering wheel, right? I mean, things happen. People do dumb stuff by accident, and the tune has to be as such to, protect the car from, silly things that just happen to happen. So in that respect, yeah, okay, that would be the only area where a canned tune would be okay. But if you're running the right fuel and everything, with your custom tune is going to be far and away better than your canned tune. Mechanic is asking, know of any reputable import tuners in Houston, by the way? What is the name of that place over off of 59? Depends on the import tuners. I know Eurotune is here in Houston, as a matter of fact. They do a really good work. So look up Eurotune. I cannot remember the place off of 59. It's one of those things where I'm looking right at it. If you can just see into my eyeballs here, I cannot remember the damn name of it. Anyway, check out I think it was Eurotune. Can get you taken care of. Catalyst99 is saying, 20 years ago, did you ever envision yourself one day driving a factory 700 plus horsepower car? Buddy, I couldn't have envisioned 20 years ago anything making 700 horsepower that would run on gasoline that would idle like a stock car. I mean, there's stuff that's out today that, it just blows my mind. And it's not so much the fact that it's making 700 horsepower. It's that it's making 700 horsepower and gets 21, 23 miles per gallon going down the highway at 75 or 80 miles an hour. That's got all the gizmos and gadgets and everything else that it comes with. It runs, mid 10s in the heat, 1040s, 1050s. I mean, a true mid 10-second car in the heat on gasoline, like 93 octane, get it at the Exxon, literally right up the street from where I live, gasoline. I mean, that's the thing. It's just so weird. And the other crazy thing about it is that it's not like this is the fastest car on the street. By comparison, there's cars that are a lot faster. There always will be, but those run on 93 octane too. Blows my mind. Crazy that they're able to get this kind of power, and the reliability, the warrantability is there too. You know, and the funny thing is that nothing from the past can compare to these modern cars. People try to compare them all the time, and I've tried to explain to them, it's like, how do you put it? It's hard to describe driving a big block. You drive a big block with a well-sorted 4-barrel, decent enough cam with long tubes, decent exhaust system, whether it's a 4-speed car or an automatic, turbo 400, 727, whatever, it doesn't matter. Built turbo 350, it's all the same thing. The tip-in torque is so much greater, but that's really more a function of percentages of throttle opening from 0 to tip-in to wide open. But the way that they drive is the difference. The weight of the vehicle is less from back then than it is today. The torque, the tip-in torque, is really the thing that will wake you up. But all of that being said, as neat as that is, the numbers just are not there. And look, they're just going to get faster, guys. And I got news for you. They're going to get a lot faster at the same rate that they've been getting faster. I mean, take a look at like the Mach 1, the GT350. Take a look at the GT500. Okay, those are the offerings from Ford. The latest crop. I mean, they're the ones that are at the cutting edge right now in terms of technology, innovation, and just cars that are newer. You've got 480 horsepower net power, mind you, coming out of basically a 5-liter. Okay, that is nutty to say the least. I mean, that's more than race engines from back in the day, like hardcore race engines from back in the day. On the SCCA circuit for sure. The 392 is another good example. If you were to rate the 392 SAE before it was J1304, it would be over 500 horsepower engine. Like a legit 500 horsepower. Not a fabricated, not a gross 500. Like a straight up legitimate 500 horsepower engine. So it's nutty what you're able to get out of these engines today. The efficiency, the power is just so far and away greater because the computer technology just takes over at that point. But I gotta tell you, it takes some splaining. And here's what I mean by that. When we start talking about this is where, why doesn't the Hemi camshaft pick up so much? Well, because Hemis are already basically maxed out. Think of what it would have taken back in the day to get 500 horsepower out of a street-focused package that's basically a board and stroke small block. I mean, 500 horsepower is kind of a big number, but you would probably be running a single plane intake. It wouldn't make shit for torque. Maybe it makes 530 to the crank, but so it beats it by 30 horsepower, but it gets smoked down low in torque by this. I mean, there's ways you could have done it, and there's a number to be seen, but you take like Rob's car that's got my cam in it. That design was specifically for heavy cars, and it picked up 30 something odd horsepower to the rear wheels, but it picked it up across the board. Lots of tip-in torque, that whole deal. So that engine at the rear wheels is somewhere around, I don't know, say 540, 550. I don't even know. Basically, get put down like right at 500 on that Mustang, or on that Dyno Jet. you look at it from that point of view, that's a 540 horsepower engine. Taking, parasitic drag, front engine accessory drive, and all that would, bump it even higher. So the idea is, I would take 700 horsepower out of it. Dude, we got all these engines making well over 500 horsepower or close to 500 horsepower. I mean, the Legends didn't make that kind of power. And even if you look at the FAST series, the guys that do true stock rebuilds on like Hemi Roadrunners and, Stage 1 Buicks and the like, you do an honest to goodness, true stock rebuild on those cars, even giving them, 30 over on the pistons, but maintain 10.5 to 1 on the Hemis with a hydraulic flat tappet cam. That's a 13-second car. I mean, you might be able to eke a mid-12 out of it. That's something a lot of guys don't realize. I mean, yeah, you can solid lifter, cam, different intake, and different carburetor, and it makes a ton more power. And obviously, long tube headers makes a ton more power. But it's a race car at that point. Sure, you can run high 9s with it, or at least mid 10s, depending on where you live. Puts it right in the category of one of these things. But that's the way that it is. So again, a lot of guys ask, do we live in the heyday? It's like, yeah, kind of. But this is also the heyday of transmissions. I mean, you got to remember, these transmissions are making a lot more of an impact than you might think, especially when you start to consider the weights of these vehicles. So anyway, getting back to it, Mark is saying, would you ever consider making content that teaches current or future Mopar owners about Hemis? I love Mopar, but I don't know Mopar, if you get what I'm saying. Absolutely. So I've done that a few times. I may bring that back. He's asking, actually, like an in-depth showing of the engine. I know you already give commentaries about what mods work on the Hemis. So, yeah, I mean, I've thought about trying to figure out a way to do that. I just don't have access to a Gen 2 or a Gen 1 Hemi to be able to take it apart and just literally show you. But a lot of that already exists. There's a lot of really good content that breaks down Hemi, true Hemi, things like that. And what I typically will get into is I've got a funny habit of kind of digressing into old engine technology and why the Hemi is a thing. Why would you even consider a hemispheric cylinder head? So yeah, I mean, I've thought about it. There's some things that I've thought about doing there. I may do a standalone, just a regular video, just talking about why Hemi. But in short, the reason why the Hemi was initially used, like in Hall Scott engines, we're going back to the late 1800s, early 1910s, when the octane rating of gasoline was 50. The stuff would ignite if you just stared at it wrong. But the reason why, all those engines were very low compression ratio back then too, by the way. So if you have a low compression engine, large cylinder, long stroke, how do you get the most air into an engine and then out of the engine and evacuate this big long cylinder the most efficient way possible? Well, you use a hemispherical head. And back then, the cylinder head was actually part of the cylinder. There really wasn't anything as far as a cylinder head. It was just a cylinder rounded off at the top, mechanically driven overhead camshaft with 45-degree angle heads, intake, exhaust. The reason why it was so great is that the Hemi has the highest volumetric efficiency in terms of just moving air of any cylinder head design. The downside is that it's the lowest thermal efficient. In other words, it bleeds off heat a lot. You've got more surface area with the Hemi. You've got more surface area with the dome piston. Pistons are heavy also. Some of the drawbacks there of the Hemi. But all that surface area allows for heat absorption, which on one hand is good, but for making power, it's less thermodynamically efficient. So when you take that into account, that works great when you have a volatile fuel. And so that's what they went with. And from there, you look at the thermal efficiency part of it is, it's not that big of a deal. We can bump up compression But the big deal is it moves a lot of air, and that's why Hemi is so good. But the downside is it takes it all in big gulps. It's a tumble port. The same is true in a way for any 4-valve engine. You're just taking intake air in from one side and you're dumping it on the other side, and it's basically, you know, there's a direct line of sight, also called shotgun heads. But they move a lot of air, but they do it in big gulps, and they're not as efficient, especially at low speeds. At least at low port speeds, they're not as good. Ramp up the port velocity though, that's when you've got a lot of air moving, and that's where they really come into their own. But that's also why you would run them for like a like top fuel. Why don't they use a wedge head in top fuel? Well, for one, you've got a bunch of actual fluid. You got nitromethane running through there, and again, air is a fluid. And so when you treat it as such, you need something that is, in this case, hydrodynamically efficient because of the amount of fuel that they're running, and that's why Hemi heads are used in that application. So there's a lot of, in other words, in that case, you know, if you know, to build more compression, you just throw more boost at it. So Hemis do great under boost for that reason. So do 4-valve engines. But there's a lot. I mean, it's just, and really, you guys know my phrase. It's like hanging a shower curtain. There's so many places to start when you're starting to talk about Hemi. And Hemi is not something that's just a Dodge thing. Everybody's had a Hemi at some point. There's been Hemis in development from every manufacturer at some point in time. The Brits were big into Hemis. The Aussies had a true Hemi 6-cylinder, which was a badass little engine. So you've got a lot of stuff like that comes into play. And again, the big downside to the Hemi is just low speed torque production. They just, no matter what your compression ratio is, if you've got just slow moving air, it's going to be lazy until the thing starts to become efficient. And that's why the 440 was such a popular engine, is that, I mean, a 440 Mopar, by the way, is like having a big block with a set of small block heads on it. They don't flow a ton from the factory, but what they lack in flow, they more than make up for in port velocity. Lots of cylinder fill down low, which makes them real torquey, real peppy, real exciting to drive all the time. And so it's, you know, 0.3 of a second slower than a Hemi in the quarter mile. The big difference is that Hemi is going past it. That's where the Hemi comes into play. But, you know, for the average driver, that's why the Hemis back then just weren't that, they just weren't that popular. And this is at a point in time where, you know, the cars didn't represent near as much of an impact on your wallet as they do today, just in terms of a percentage of your average income. You know, the $800, which would be roughly $8,000 today to get a hot rod Hemi, was, I mean, it was affordable. Guys did it. I mean, there was 15,000 Hemi cars built, bought, and sold. I mean, it's not like they sat around or anything. And it's really not like they're ultimately that rare. But, you know, there's things that are rare for a reason. You know, you don't see, you know, shit sandwich kiosks when you go to the mall. And the reason why is nobody wants a shit sandwich. Well, this is kind of the same way, except, you know, they call the Hemi the elephant motor. It's actually more like white elephant. It's great if you have it. It's fun to talk about, but the care and feeding of that thing is going to be monstrous. And keep in mind that they just weren't, for the average guy or girl that's into hot rods, they just didn't have that initial tip-in throttle response. And I know this because I've driven them. I mean, I've dynoed them. I know exactly what they're going to put down. I know what they're going to do. So, I mean, they're neat. They're fun engines to drive. In fact, for a lot of folks, they would kind of consider it a bit familiar with today's types of engines, in that they acted like kind of a big small block when they were set up properly anyway. So neat engine. They definitely had their place, but, you know, rare for different reasons. They weren't rare because they were spooky and, you know, oh my God, the great Hemi is going to, you know, nothing like that. It was that you drive a 440 car and it's real punchy and it kind of gets your attention right now. Plus it came with a warranty, you know, versus a Hemi that was expensive by that day's standard for sure. If something goes haywire with it, it's going to be a major problem to fix. you know, financially. And back then, people weren't as quick to just throw money around as they are now. So, you know, most enthusiasts were going, yeah, I'm not going to go that route. Now, racers knew that going with the Hemi was the direction that they needed to go if they wanted to win races. I mean, that's just the way that it was. And, you know, that if you wanted to go really fast, you went with the Hemi, but you had to have everything that's come with it. I have the book, you know, the original 1964. Even then, they called the Hemi, the race Hemi, the Super Commando 426 Hemi. I've got the tune-up specs, the cross-section specs, the mill specs, everything on that engine. It's not all that complicated. It's not as powerful as a lot of folks thought, but, you know, when your car only weighs 3,300 pounds, that much torque out of a big block is going to be kind of a big deal. So, but it is not the best actual option. It's just a very good option for a very single focus. Rift is asking, would you say that most big block setups are made for NA? No. I would say most big block setups are made for just whatever you want to do with them. I mean, you got to remember a Mark III big block from Chevrolet was designed specifically to take out the Hemi. It just so happened that with a canted valve setup, you could build it and it would be cheaper than building a Hemi, and you could basically do everything that the Hemi was doing more or less with that setup. You know, the Boss motors were kind of the same way. Pretty much anything with a canted valve setup is more or less that semi-Hemi architecture. So you can put a supercharger on them, you can run them NA, you can do whatever you want. I mean, they're going to be equally at home either way. I would say just the same, everything the same for a small block applies to a big block. It's just going to be a little bit more expensive, but you're going to make some more power with it. Tip-in's going to be a lot stronger too. Machine saying, talking about cars being faster in the near future, you heard about the Mercedes will no longer be making 8-cylinder AMGs because of emissions. You think other car brands will follow? I'm going 4- and 6-cylinder. I will say this. I've heard of that. The V8 has been on its way out now for 40 years, though. At some point, you know, emissions, it's Mercedes-Benz. We'll let the market determine where that goes. I don't know that they'll ever stop making V8 necessarily. That's just because, I mean, they're going to have to come out with some kind of super pissed off V6. Not saying they can't do it, but, you know, an inline 6 or a V6 that can make, you know, 600-700 horsepower is not that hard to come up with. 500 horsepower is obviously easy to do with a turbo V6. So the thing is, it just depends on what number do they want to come up with, where are they going to want to be, and how do they want to get there. And, you know, the smart money is saying, you know, go with the turbo V6 route or the high, very high cylinder pressure 4-cylinder. Here's my take on that, though. I don't like that idea. Not because I'm a diehard V8 fan. I'm really not. It doesn't matter to me how many cylinders the thing has. Is it fast? Is it reliable? Does it, you know, those are the things I want to know about. Can I upgrade it? If it makes 400, can I make 800 with it? Or if I make 425, does it blow the fuck up? Here's the thing. The problem with the high compression, or I'm sorry, the high boost V6s and 4-cylinders, that they're just simply not that efficient. You're constantly going to have your foot in it, and people say, well, we're going to do this because of emissions. That's stupid. That only counts in steady state, which means that when the engine's only making the 50 or 30 horsepower, whatever it takes to make your car go 65 or 75 miles an hour, in that respect, yeah, it might be better. But in any type of acceleration, it's actually going to be worse because you're immediately going to go into boost, which means your AFR is immediately going to go rich, which means that, you know, your carbon emissions are going to go through the roof, more at least than with an NA car, which will stay at relatively, you know, 14.7, 13.8, 13.5 for most of its acceleration life, just to, you know, like a lumbering up to 0 to 60. Okay, the V8's just going to go and it's going to go. And let's say the AFR doesn't ever get any more rich than 13.5. that high pressure 6-cylinder, or especially an ultra high pressure 4-cylinder, is going to be at 11.7 for most of that trip to that same speed. So if they're making the same power, the carbon footprint's actually going to be bigger with the smaller engine. And that's kind of the argument. I mean, it depends on how you want to define emissions, because again, this starts getting into the whole marketing of what is and what isn't emissions and all this other stuff, and making numbers lie for you is really not my way of being cool. All I can tell you is that my personal experience was I had a rental. This is the funniest thing. I had a rental car that had, it was, I forget what Ford it was, one of the Escapes or something, had the EcoBoost, the 2.7 or the 2.3, whatever it was, EcoBoost in it. That thing was fun as shit to drive, but it got horrible fuel economy. And I was like, dude, this thing sucks gas. Like, I figured it'd be a 4-cylinder, but it was always under boost. If I'm entering traffic, max out boost. If I'm doing anything with that thing, it was always running high boost. So, I mean, the only time it got halfway decent fuel economy is if you're, again, steady state highway driving. That was it. I mean, I don't know. So if they do it, fine. It's their prerogative. Like I said, the market will find its own means. But if they're going to do it based on, I mean, if they're doing it under the guise of emissions, that's stupid. Don't do it because of that. Do it because, hey, look, we're going to save weight. We're going to make the same power. It's going to be faster. It's going to be more exciting to drive. Do it for those reasons. Don't try to slide it into the conversation as, you know, some kind of fucking moral high ground. Like, well, we're doing it because of, you know, some fart sniffing reason. Like, we're doing it because of emissions. It's stupid. Do it. I hate that moral engineering type of bullshit. It's not for emissions. And people aren't dummies. People look at it and go, well, obviously you're working it harder to do the same business. You know, if it's a smaller engine to get it to accelerate, you're going to be working it harder because it has less displacement. The only way to gain displacement is to cram displacement into the cylinder. And that's what you get with boost. So anyway, Nathan, hey, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the contribution, my friend. Didn't have a question to go with it, but I thank you very much. Rick is saying, I think the turbo straight 6 engine has a lot of potential for cars in the future if companies start looking to make V8s or start to get out of V8s. I love inline 6 turbos, so yeah, I'm all about that life. Rick is saying Nick's Garage does good breakdowns of Hemis. Yeah, he does. I mean, it's kind of cool what he does. I try to catch up with his stuff every once in a while, but I just, you know, the only problem that I have with that channel is that it'll say something along the lines of 340 Mopar tested, and it's an hour-long thing. Like, it'd be like me putting something up there that says, you know, quarter-mile times discussed, and it's like 5 minutes of me talking about quarter-mile times and then me talking about the truck or something else. It's just, I mean, I like the channel and it's cool. Actually, I'll sometimes have Nick's videos on in the background when I'm at work. So I like his channels a lot. Sometimes it takes him a minute to get where he's going. And I mean, you guys kind of understand that. I'm the same way. I like Nick a lot. I would love to visit his shop, by the way. I would probably get up there to Canada and just be done. I'd fall in love with it. Machine saying a lot of rumors, everyone going to hybrid or electric to compete with Tesla. There's a lot of folks that have been playing with that. You've got e-boost stuff. You've got all kinds of, you know, hybrid, quote unquote, your so-called hybrid technology. Look, I'm cool with all of it. Believe me when I tell you, once they get electric sorted out, you're going to start to forget about this whole gasoline thing real quick. Once battery technology gets better, range gets a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, the battery stuff is pretty sick. Not that I'll ever, stop loving gasoline engines, but if they ever get their act together with the electric stuff, it's that instant torque down low. It's just nutty. And if they can make transmissions able to handle that, to where you can have first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, where it shifts, it goes da 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 da, like right off the bat, and maybe gets it to 50% and then slams it back down, 50%, slams it back down. That's when you're going to see those cars. I mean, you'll be frying tires at 110 miles an hour with those things. So get ready for that, by the way. Let's see. Oh, Rift is saying, like how some cars use electric motors to help acceleration, but don't rely on them altogether. Yeah, the hybrids are kind of cool at that. And, there's some of them you can get 20, 30, 50, 70 miles out of that electric motor, which I think is kind of cool. You're not going to be running the engine itself, which, cuts down on maintenance, cuts down on wear and tear, cuts down on a lot of stuff that, if you don't need the extra power, you're just kind of putting to get around or, putting to get somewhere. It's kind of neat to have that mode. I liken it to valet mode with these things. Sometimes I'll put my car in valet mode just because it's a freaking funny thing to, watt the throttle and it goes, So anyway, it's just where you're having fun with it. But yeah, trust me, there's the hybrid stuff is pretty cool, pricey, but it is pretty neat. Let's see. Oh, 6'4" Hemi Power saying, finally got my Hellcat. Don't want to get too crazy. What do you suggest my first mod be? Mod to be a pulley swap? No. If my suggestion to you would be to do a pulley swap, I would be a hypocrite. She's still running stock pulleys and has run a best of a 1016 backed up by a 10, or run a 1019 backed up by a 1017 backed up by a 1016. That's on stock boost with a 309 gear. So what would I suggest? I would suggest a tune 309 gear, or a tune trans tune 309 gear. That's the direction I would go with your car. And don't worry about air filters. Just don't. I ran a 1016, which ain't nobody else done, on 93 octane gasoline, by the way, with the stock Hellcat filter. Golly gee. So, save up for tires. Drag radials will be your brand new best friend. You could probably have a side piece that'll cost you less than tires are going to cost you now for this car. But anyway, that's why my wife calls this the mistress. But the reality is that there's nothing that I would suggest to you to start throwing power at it just yet. I would say gear, tune, trans tune, set of tires, and learn the car, get out there and have some fun with it. If you don't want to put a gear in it, if it's not in the budget, or you just don't, because you're going to have to, look, you don't have to have a tune for the gear. You could probably put a gear in it and put a pedal commander and just give it more driver command torque, and you'd probably be happy. The problem with a 309 gear is that there's just nothing there for the gear to push against. It gets a lot easier, and so it feels a little softer with the gear initially. You throw a little driver command torque at it though, and it makes it kind of nice. And that's all because of the curve, the built-in curve of the stock throttle, curve. the built-in, the way that the driver command torque is registered by the tune. It's a built-in, think of it like a rheostat, like when you turn up the volume on something. The way that it works from your point of view, it looks kind of like this. And it's just percentages of throttle opening. You need to make it more linear. And you can do that with a pedal commander. You don't have to have a tune on the car. Which, again, gets you that pep back with that 309 gear. But like I say, that, tires, tune, trans tune, even if you don't want to do tune or trans tune, you don't have to. That'd be the extent that I would say to do to it. Riff saying, do a tune. Cal is asking, do you like the 50s Dodge Custom Royale Lancer? I actually have a advertisement. It's hanging in my office. It's not that car, but I've got some advertisements, Dodge advertisements for I've got quite a few of them, actually. I got a bunch of older stuff like that. I love the 50s Dodge stuff. I'm really more of a DeSoto fan though. So obviously the late 50s Belvederes. You would know them as the Furies from like Christine type cars. I love those. But like I say, I'm really more of a DeSoto fan than anything else. But I love all of them. I think they're great. Oh, 64 saying, sorry, I forgot to mention I installed JLT intake and deleted. So here's the thing. I would say, and deleted mid muffler. I would say that the JLT is cool. It sounds good. And that's the other thing. I guess I forgot to mention it because I don't have it on my car. You can actually see the stock intake popping out right there. I like the JLT. I think it sounds good. If you want some theater to go along with your Hellcat, which I think is totally cool, then I would say, yeah, go that route for sure, because like I say, they sound good and they're a lot of fun to make, make noise. Canada guys asking, how are you doing tonight, B? My man, I am doing well. Thank you for asking. Quick question, I'm sure you have answered before. Would a larger throttle body help with response on a 6.1, or should I just use Diablo tune? So technically, yes, it will help you with throttle response. The thing is, it's helping with throttle response basically because your percentage of the amount that the throttle body is open at any given level, you're just going to be allowing more air in at that cracked throttle level, so to speak, if that makes any sense. So just by the nature of it being larger, yes, it'll help with throttle response. What I would do though is keep that throttle body, because it works fine at the stock power levels, works great as a matter of fact. I would just ramp up the driver command torque in the tune. I would say bump up the driver command torque for the first, say, half of the table. Bump that up by 4%, 6% until it gets about to where you want it. And what you're going to do from your point of view, you're going to kind of arc that table up and then flatten it out a little bit on the big end, because so technically you're getting it more realistically. The way that it works is you're going to get it more linear as opposed to being concave. I know my fingers are kind of jacked up so I can do that, but it'll be more concave coming up. So what you're going to want to do is just get a little bit more of that linear feel to it. And the way you do that initially is just at about the 20% throttle marker, bump that to like 24%. And then at 30%, you would maybe bump that to 33.5. And then at 40%, bump that to 43. And then, just kind of spread that idea out a little bit, and that'll help ramp that up for you. That's a subjective thing too. There's no hard and fast, this is better or that's better. Some guys like it, that kind of the softer pedal throw, to where it's more linear in terms of what you would perceive torque to be like, or torque delivery to be like. Other guys like a more cable driven type of a feel, which what that means is that your torque table from your point of view would actually be more arced up like this than linear. And that's just because if you have a throttle body, and let's say it's opened at 0 and versus like 20% versus 50%, there's a big difference just in air that's going to be running through that throttle body. That's funny, because the throttle response thing is one that is an issue that comes up a lot, and that's why I like pedal commanders. It allows you to play with just how aggressive that throttle feel is, because everybody's a little bit different. What I consider comfortable, so to speak, it's like wearing shoes, driving your car. What I consider comfortable, you might go, oh, that sucks, or what you go, oh, you got to try this out. And I go, oh, that's the shittiest thing. It's the same idea. It's so subjective. So for me, throttle response and all of that is, such a subjective thing that's why I like the pedal commander, because you can dial it up, dial it down. Makes it nice for cruising. You can really soften it up for long trips to where you're just, major inputs on the throttle really don't affect the car that much until you're way deep into the throttle. It's just kind of a neat thing. I don't have one for my car because I can adjust it in the tune, And I happen to like where the car is, but there have been times where, on longer trips, I'll just set the cruise control because, just holding my foot in that one position is tough. Where if you've got the pedal commander, you can just, if your foot moves the car, it's almost like having a form of cruise control. It's like, I don't know, cruise light or something. Nathan's saying, came out of a 5.7 Challenger into the 6.4 Scat Challenger, saving the pennies for a Hellcat. Thanks for taking the time to spread the knowledge. Absolutely. You're going to love your 6.4, man. I mean, to this day, there's such a difference between driving the two. I'll tell you this, especially if you get a Hellcat, put a 309 and don't mess with the throttle tuning. Got that real snappy throttle response, high compression, big cubic inches, real snappy, just a fun car to drive. There's a significant difference between that and the Hellcat. You got to remember that the Hellcat is a smaller engine and lower compression. So when she's not in boost, she's just a little bit soft. And that's, for some guys, one of the first things that you notice. Now you go tip into the throttle and things are a whole lot different. But that being said, you never really have that whack, 392 snappiness, not unless you're really getting into the throttle. So, yeah, the Hellcat is faster. It's noticeably faster, but a lot of that kind of, the problem is that takes center stage, so to speak. That ET, that big hit on the mile an hour thing where it just carries the torque out under those hard partial throttle runs. But just cruising around that 392, real snappy, real fun car, especially coming off the line. And here's the other fun thing about the 6.4 over the Hellcat. And this is stuff that I've tried to explain to guys, with 6.4s that have gone to Hellcats, keeping in mind that, yes, I did really well with my 392. But you got to remember, I've driven everybody's hot rod, everybody's 1,000 horsepower, 1,100 horsepower, 800 horsepower, whatever cars. The Hellcats are just an incredibly robust platform. And that's why I went with it. Plus, the deal was really good. I didn't want to pass it up. But here's the thing. The 392, you can use all of its power all the time. You put a set of ET Street R's on it and it will hook on the street. You put a set of Tri-5s on it and with practice you can make it dead hook on the street. 0 to 60 will actually be a little bit quicker in some cases with the 392 than with the Hellcat. Just with all the pedaling and you're driving the Hellcat to get there, whereas a 392 you just go yeah, and it goes that way really fast. There's some things to be said about that. Now, granted, no, you don't get the big hit and the big partial throttle pulls that you can with the Hellcats. It's not going to happen with 392. But you get everything but that. It makes all the same noises. And believe me when I tell you, I drive everybody's car. At some point, I get a request to run 392 cars at the drag strip, Hellcats, Demons, Red Eyes, whatever. I have a lot of fun with the 392 cars. They make all the same noises and they do all the same thing going down the track. Now the number, who cares about the number? If you're having fun, get out there and do it. And besides, it's not going to be slow. It doesn't take much of a 392 to get that thing in the mid 11s at least. 1180s are basically a cakewalk with a decent drag wheel and tire setup and a tune and a trans tune. So, and a Hellcat airbox. It's almost accidental, especially in good air. So, ain't nothing slow about an 11-second car. I don't know. I wouldn't say don't be so quick to get into a Hellcat, but I would say don't be so quick to get rid of that 392. You will miss it. But I wouldn't trade her in on one. Rip is asking, does the pedal commander work well with 6-speed? Yes, it does. As a matter of fact, Sean E. with his Scat Pack, he had a pedal commander on that car and he loved it. So yes, it definitely does work well with the 6-speed. Canada guy saying, yeah, I would love to dial it up. Going for the old school drive-by cable feel. Also, can you tune out the rev hang with the tune? A little bit, yeah. There's some things that you can tune out with it. Some guys like it, some guys don't. That initial chop of the throttle can be a little bit of a pain in the ass, but yeah, you can. But again, that's a subjective thing, and some guys like it to drop at a certain rate, like what they're used to. I think one of the things that you might be used to with the older cars, so you have three different ways to look at it. You've got carbureted, which is straight, open, closed with no bleeder. Throttle body or any other fuel injected setup where you have an idle control valve, which you can't really control. You can, but you can't. It's a pain in the ass. Anyway, where even when the throttle blade drops, the idle control valve will control that hang. And then the newer stuff where they don't have an idle control valve, it's all done through the throttle body. The cool thing about the older cars, you can just block off the idle air control valve to a certain extent, but not always the best idea. That'll piss off a tune. But yeah, you can adjust it somewhat, but I just never did get anybody requesting on that. But yes, that can be adjusted. And Rich is saying, I hate the rev hang. A lot of guys do. Me and Rip are in the same boat. Rip's saying, I don't know. It seems that rev hang happens more in sport or in track mode. There's no separate anything in the airflow table for track or sport for that. So yeah, it might be that you just might be into it a little bit harder or whatnot, but that there's nothing in there in that tune under the airflow table for more or less airflow. Maha is asking, how much tuning, if any, can be done on a stock PCM? None can be done on a stock PCM. They all have to be unlocked. Rich is saying 2015 or newer, I think you can't tune them. That is correct. You have to have them unlocked. And he's saying, actually, that might be 2011 and up. It started in 15 is when you had to unlock them. You can still tune them in 11 without unlocking them, but you do still need to have the credits. And then Scat Speed's got the arm flex. I like it. Man, speaking of arm flex, so back in the gym, was doing 2-a-days, back to basically just hitting the gym in the mornings. And I got to tell you, man, the lag, taking time off, it has taken me forever to get back into it with any real semblance of dignity. I'll put it to you that way. Got the circuit down with, heavy bag. You see, it's speed bag for basically 100 reps each arm, and then I'll go from that. I'll move to heavy bag, and then I'll do rope drills, basically it's bob and weave type stuff. And then I'll work free bag. I'll work the soft free bag, and then I'll work. There's another bag that I like to work into that rotation. Typically it takes about 5 minutes to get through the whole thing. Chill out for about a minute or two, and then start it all back over. Right? Well, it hurts basically throughout my shoulder. Of course, doing dumb rookie stuff like going a little bit too aggressive on the stiff bags. But yeah, it's driving me nuts trying to stay back working out, man. Between that and the diet, it's just not getting there. Hey, Riff, thank you very much, brother. Appreciate it. Saying thank you for all the knowledge. Wish me luck putting my unlocked PCM and tune on in the next few days. Well, good luck with that. I think you'll get it. It's not really that tough to do. Just follow the protocol and you'll be in good shape, my brother. Nothing to worry about. But thank you very much for the contribution to the cause, man. Very much. And let us know how it goes. Let's see. Viaga is saying, what's up, B? Got the arm flex. Any news of the whole Challenger Chargers thing? Not really. Nothing that we haven't already heard. But again, there's been delays and everything like that. I mean, we're looking at 2023 for the update of the LX platform. which is more or less the LA family of platforms. That's the 300, the Charger, the Challenger, basically the sedan, the car section. But FCA is being a little bit tight-lipped as far as what they're going to do, what they're going to introduce, what we're going to see. And so far as I can tell, it's going to be a reworked version of the LX platform, little bit lighter, little bit of a facelift, little bit more technology, but engines really don't look to be changing too much. At least that's the rumor. That's kind of where the rumor mill is taking us. The problem there is that it's just far enough over the horizon, right? It's just a little bit farther over the horizon. They're not going to really start letting us in on anything. They're still planning, development, and certifications and things like that are in the mix. The big thing, at least so far as I can tell, is that people are being tight-lipped about, at least if nothing else. No new patents, no new trademarks, no new anything like that has really popped up for names or EPA emission standards testings or anything like that. So at least not yet. No, nothing's really been rattled around as far as I know of in that respect. There's rumors abound, right? Like it's going to move to a V6 and the V8's going away, and the Hellcat. The only thing that's really known is that the Hellcat platform, whether it's in this guy's or in the Red Eye, isn't going away anytime soon. I mean, FCA is making way too much money with that. The 5.7 really doesn't look to be going anywhere anytime soon either. Possibly you might see a bump in power out of the 5.7 moving to an SRV style intake manifold, and maybe a bump in power for the V6. But for the most part, if they can get the weight down, I think the target was like 200 pounds or something like that, which is just fine. But to get the weight down, again, an update, a refresh is about the most you can look to get out of these. As far as power plants go, don't look for anything new. The main reason why is that the certification, the cost of everything that you've got to do to put one of those things into production is going to be pretty difficult. There's a lot of folks that have asked about, well, what about an aluminum block? I don't know anything about that for a production Hemi, other than a lot of folks are asking about it. They'd like to see it as part of a weight reductions program. If you look at it as a total percentage of the weight of the vehicle, 100 pounds, when you've got 4,400 pounds where the car, it just isn't very much. However, 100 pounds is 100 pounds, and that can only help. And so if there's any development with that, I don't know anything about it, but I would love to hear some great news coming from our neighbors down south that they're, starting to cast aluminum blocks in, 392 displacement territory. That would be amazing. I wouldn't want to see a Hellcat engine. It needs to be it has to be cast iron. It just, the structural integrity of cast iron is far and away better than the aluminum. So, it needs to go that route. And as a matter of fact, to kind of further that point, I mean, you've got the drag pack engines. Those are 426s, and they are aluminum, but you have to remember that is a race engine that is really just a quarter of a mile at a time. It's not really a street engine. Not in that guise anyway, especially not with that cam and not turning to that RPM. But, I mean, you can technically make it work on the street, but yeah, if you watched Demonology's video, I think AJ had his car, he was even talking about it, going, look, man, oil temperatures were going through the roof with that aluminum block. And what that tells me is that's not a heat dissipation thing. I mean, you wouldn't want to hot lap that thing. That tells me that block might be moving around a little bit. So, not by enough to really worry you, but enough to where you're going to want to let it cool down between runs. Not saying that you can't work an aluminum block hard, but iron block's really the way to go when you start pushing them that hard. Let's see. But that's the latest news I've heard, and really that hasn't changed in a while too, unfortunately. Calistan, I saw an Audi V10 today, beautiful car, but I had to look at the price. MSRP is $169. Yeah, they're kind of crazy. The old A8s were a lot of got a lot of my attention. I get those kind of, well, not for that much, but you know, very well engineered car. Scat saying, I haven't uploaded a video lately. I've been working non-stop on the Barracuda. I've been reinforcing the unibody. Good idea on that one. That's another thing about the older cars is that, you know, the more I work on my truck, the more I realize they were just kind of put together. I mean, it's not like they were designed to last forever. You'd say, oh, they were built to last back then. No, they weren't. They were built to be assembled fast back then. And the technology just wasn't there like it is now, as you would probably imagine. So, you know, there's some structural integrity issues and flex issues that are in there. I'll give you a great example of this. My dad's Corvette, 69 big block Corvette convertible, going over railroad tracks, the frame of that thing would flex enough, or even bumps for that matter, where the hood would go pop up. It would actually, you know, just pop up, come unlatched. It was kind of funny. But yeah, such was the build quality back then. Scatsby said, what about the ACR Challenger? Do you think it's coming out? It is not coming out. Latest answer to that question was a big resounding no, that the ACR wasn't going to come out because there's no real reason for them to drop an ACR Challenger on the marketplace. Which on one hand is a bit of a shame. You know, I would like to see some level of support for the NA guys. At this stage of the game, I'll take anything. It's not drag racing, which is where they spend all their marketing dollars. CA. If it's going to be somewhere, I mean, that's where I would see them doing it, and realistically, that's where they should do it. But, you know, when you think about it, you know, the ACR Challenger, as cool as it sounded, I just don't know what the audience is for it. I mean, there's, I mean, yeah, it looks kind of neat as the fin and the whatever, but it's just not really going to be a thing. I think it was part of the rumor mill started churning out as it normally does. It kind of makes up things and it puts it out into the world to see if it sticks, or throws it out in the world, I should say, to see if it sticks. And I think that's really more the value of that vehicle, is that it just, you know, it's part of a rumor mill that just kind of kept trucking along with a few other things. Now, that being said, you know, the Hellcat Dakota, or not Dakota, the Hellcat Durango and the, you know, the Hellcat truck, the TRX, you know, that's a thing. So, you know, thumbs up on that. You know, just one more four-door or two more four-doors that platform goes into, that Hellcat platform, with the Challenger being the only two-door platform that has that Hemi engine in it with the supercharger. Blows my mind. Anyway, the world we're living in today. But, and even from the Viper front too, there's no, when did I go to Mecum? I still had my card from that. Anyway, I was hanging out with the FCA crew and, you know, marketing and all of that, and talking to those guys about what is coming. And, you know, this is even a few years ago. Typically this stuff is in the pipeline for about 5 years, and you know, if you're going to start seeing stuff, you'll start seeing stuff about 2 to 3 years out. Or hearing about, I should say, you know, the things start to leak at about that point. And even he was saying, you know, we had a long conversation, and the stuff we were talking about was, you know, what is the long-term viability of the platform? You know, where does this go? What about the new Viper? You know, because, you know, the old Viper on its way out, market test studies were showing it was never going to do well with the female buying demographic, which I get. So that was going back to the drawing board. And where it sits now, I'm not sure, but it would have to be a direct line of sight competitor to the Corvette. That would mean it would have to have an automatic transmission and a naturally aspirated V8, not the V10. V10, I was told, is not coming back. Biggest pain in the ass. It's like having a, you know, just a boat anchor of a motor in terms of marketability. So, nope. That's the latest stuff that I know, and that's kind of old news. Let's see. Machine's asking, which would you go for Highway Warrior, C7 ZR1 or an ACR? Talking about the ACR Viper, I would go ZR1 because it's got better support. You know, the ZR1 with the bigger blower, I mean, sky's the limit with that thing. The Viper, I mean, yeah, here's the problem with the Viper. You can make a lot of power with the Viper, but the suspension geometry on the Viper is just not as good as the Vet. It simply isn't. And I know this from driving both of them. You know, I raced Gen 2s on the street, drag strip, closed circuit. I even autocrossed them. I did all kinds of stuff with Gen 2 Vipers. The modern stuff, yes, it's a whole lot better, but it still isn't quite as good as the Vet. And if I'm going after, you know, basically if I'm taking runs to Mexico, I want to make sure that I'm working with something that is reliable at high RPM, at high speeds, and if something does go south, obviously neither one of them are going to be cheap to fix. Don't let anybody lie to you and say a ZR1 is cheaper to fix, because they're both going to be expensive as shit. But if you've got money for a ZR1, you got money to fix a ZR1. Viper, just not as well supported. I don't know. We were getting it done back in the day on the 100 to 200 mile an hour stuff. We were getting that done with Gen 2 Vipers and Vets and Porsches and, you know, LT1 supercharged nitrous combinations. So yeah, I mean, it's not like the Windsor combinations we get out there every once in a while, mix it up. So yeah, I mean, there's ways to get around, you know, the going fast part of it on the highway, but for me, damn, I mean, you almost have to go ZR1 in a way, because going fast is just super easy. I mean, it's a pulley swap, right? Pulley swap, tune, done. So, I don't know. It'd be tough, but probably the pragmatic way to go about it is ZR1. Rift is asking, is it common to have a weird whirring or whooshing sound when I turn my Hellcat off? It does it all the time. By the way, I do have a JLT intake that, and so that might be it. Yeah, the sound seems to be coming from the intake. Yeah, you're hearing the bypass open, and you know, when you're shutting everything down. Yeah, everything goes ka-ch when you shut them down. It's kind of neat. Rip saying, personally, the C701 is one of my dream cars. Yeah, that's tough to say no to. Maha is saying aluminum chassis. Well, the thing is, the car is unibody. So it would have to have a lot of aluminum components to it. Maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't. I mean, it's, again, you know, you get into that aspect of it, you get structural rigidity, you get crash worthiness comes into play with that. So, you know, and there's a lot of, I mean, the funny thing is, if you take all of the heavy duty sensor arrays and everything else out of the car, I mean, you could pull some weight out of this thing. Basically what I'm trying to do is, you know, if you try to compare this to like an older car, it's still going to be heavier. But the aluminum side of it, it would take a lot of aluminum to drag weight down. But, you know, aluminum fenders, maybe, you know, aluminum, you know, roof panels or what have you. There could be areas where you could reduce weight somewhat and not have passenger safety be an issue. Because, you know, passenger safety is incredibly important. You know, if something bad happens, you know, in a true accident, you want to make sure that you're protected. So, and by the way, it ain't like the LX platform's at the top of the list on safety to begin with. So, you know, there's some things to consider when we start talking about changing metals. But that being said, there's areas where you could drop weight that I don't think it would affect anything, especially when it comes to the doors on these things. My goodness, I mean, they're just so heavy. So, anyway, let's see. Oh, she's saying nice. Scatspeed saying, I love Vipers, they're just too expensive. That is the conversation, part of the conversation that we had, myself and the FCA marketing guy when I was at Mecum. We were just talking about, at that time I was buying my Challenger, and he was going, I tell you what, you know, anyway, we talked about, you know, a hypothetical scenario where I could literally have driven away from Mecum with the white Gen 5 that was sitting there. And I was like, well, I can't, kind of, it was 6 rather. I was like, I can't right now. This is just a, kind of a weird deal. He goes, that's the problem. The guys, we're not capturing. This is how I am with Vipers. I don't even keep up with them anymore. They don't even cross my mind anymore. Isn't that sad? Like, this is a 3-time Viper owner that doesn't even look at Vipers anymore. Gen 5, 6, 7, 10, 3, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the guy was going, the sad thing is that you've got past buyers that don't even bother with these things anymore because of the cost. They've moved to vets, Z06s, things like that. So crazy stuff. I mean, it's just it's crazy when you think about it. But they're well aware of the fact that they were getting gapped by Chevrolet with the Corvette and had no answer for it, or it didn't have an immediate answer for it. I think it was, I don't know. To me, the Viper seems like it died a little bit on the vine. They could have done a little bit to bring that around, but they didn't. Rip saying, so as you know, the email tune I'm getting is from Hemi Fever. Do you think that it would be worth it taking it over to a good shop by where I live and having it dyno tuned after? I would have it. I mean, look, Hemi Fever, you're going to be going back and forth with him a little bit on data logs. He'll be able to get you squared away on the street. I don't really have I don't have a doubt with that. The only thing that I would potentially be concerned with is that you don't have him at your disposal. So, if you're doing data logs and you start to notice more short-term knock retard for whatever reason, you need to be able to call your tuner up and be able to get a hold of him, as opposed to, having to leave messages and get back with somebody, do the thing through emails. I mean, you need to be able to take your car somewhere and have them work on it. So for me, I would rather take it to somebody local. And when I say local, it could be 2, 3, 4 hours away, 5 hours away. I understand that that's not local, but make the appointment, get you a hotel room. That's the route that I would take. Make a little bit of an adventure out of it. Just make sure that they speak fluent Mopar. I would probably go that route just to have the peace of mind that, that's something that's already been done. Now, that being said, I'm not saying Hemi Tuner can't get it done. Certainly it can, and done well. But it's going to be less convenient for you. And, for somebody that does a lot of internet tunes, he's making his money up in volume. So you just got to work off of that in a way. In other words, he's got to be able to turn those tunes to keep that machine going. I don't know. And I'm just speaking, that's my personal opinion, because I've, worked with Hemi Tuner, Hemi Fever in the past. On my older truck, as a matter of fact. Oh, Rip's saying, hey, let's see those thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up, guys. Help out with that algorithm. The all-important algorithms. And I'm going to have to check out here pretty soon, guys. We're going over 2 hours here. Let's see. My eyes saying true on safety. These things can really take a hit. Yeah, they can. And the main thing, though, is that you got to be aware of, if you start to sacrifice safety performance for vehicle performance, that's the wrong way to go, because the faster something is, the faster it's going to hit something, and the more you need to be protected, not the less. Nestor's asking, is aluminum front bumper support worth it for an NA392 for weight loss? I don't think so. I mean, front bumper support's only worth what, 20, 25 pounds? Oh man, it makes it tough proposition for the cost. I mean, if you do the front and the rear, I think it's $450, plus you got to remove that whole section of your car. I just don't know. I mean, I get it, every pound that you save is a thing, and I understand that completely. I'm on board with that way of thinking too, but you're sacrificing a little bit of safety there that I don't think 40 pounds is really worth sacrificing for. So just my O2 on that one. Damn, Rip saying I hit a wall at over 60 miles per hour head on in my 08 SRT8 Challenger and did not get a scratch. Well, that's something to be said. Like I say, they're a lot safer today than what they were back in the day too. Machine said, I'd love to see a modern SRT10 or an SVT Lightning. You can kind of get yourself an SVT Lightning. It's a TDS supercharger on a 5-liter short bed. There's a place out of, and I've seen these trucks too, they are good looking trucks. Place out of Georgia was building them. They have the lightning emblem. They've got the 5-liter TDS blower, 10-speed automatic, and they're making about 650-ish horsepower. And the replica wheels that they have are really good looking. Just check it out. Check out like 2019 Lightning or something like that. Look that thing up, and you might start saving your pennies like right now when you look that thing up, because I was like really worked up thinking about that. Scat Speed, any good Mopar tuning shops in California you can recommend? Not off the top of my head. Yeah, not off the top of my head. I can't think of any. I would do remote tuning with like Alex or something like that. Scat Speed's got thumbs up. Yes, all thumbs up. Riff saying Dittos in South San Francisco here in California is really good at working on Mopars. Man, I miss San Francisco so much, man. And tuning. Dittos Motors. Well, cool, guys. Well, hey, listen, I got to wrap it up because I got to be up early, but I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me tonight. And thanks for the contributions to the cause. Believe me, they have gone to work already on Little Miss Revlon, a.k.a. the Mistress, and on the C25. So hopefully be getting you guys some updates on that. Also be looking to get you guys some updates on the Camaro as well. I got to get the dash out of that thing, get it sent off to get its whole world flipped around and got that fixed, because the dash is jacked up like any 3rd gen would be, and I got to put tires on it too. So at any rate, thank you all very much again. Riff's going to let us know how the tune thing works out. Looking forward to that. Slime Cuda got the thumbs up. Again, thank you all very much. That is a wrap. Y'all have a fantastic rest of y'all's week, and God bless. And that is a wrap. Adios.